I'm really excited to have our two guests on tonight. Harrison Pyros is the communications lead for We Power DC, a grassroots movement out of the Metro DC DSA that is campaigning for publicly owned power in the District of Columbia. Harrison runs the social media, the video content, does the newsletter, and does that journalist outreach that we were just talking about. Harrison has helped to craft targeted legislation on utility transparency and on important ratepayer protections. And Amadi Sankara is an organizer with the Baltimore Public Power Campaign and also organizes with the Ujima People's Progress Party on tenants, on social ecology, and on the needs of Black workers. The Baltimore Public Power Campaign launched in December of 2025 and is fighting the transition from BGE, which is an investor-owned utility, to a publicly owned utility in Baltimore. And so we've got two public power campaigns in two different cities. We Power DC is fighting against Pepco. Baltimore Power is fighting against BGE. And the bigger question is who controls the essential services that shape our lives. So with that, I'm going to bring you all on. Welcome. Thank you. And welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah. So just a little bit of background. I mean, the way this got started is I went to a protest outside of City Hall here in Baltimore for public power not too long ago, a few weeks ago, and I was really impressed by the organizing, by the turnout, and the coalition that was starting to form. And so I reached out to some of those folks who had done environmental justice organizing work in the past, and they said, well, you should bring on some folks from DC too, because they're a little further along in their organizing. So that's kind of how this all came together. And with that said, I'll just throw this question to Harrison first, and then to you, Amadi. But tell us about the work you do in the organizations you're a part of, and what are the demands of your campaigns?
Yeah, absolutely. So We Power DC, we are a campaign that's local here to DC, and as it sounds, our overarching campaign is to switch Pepco, which is an investor-owned utility owned by a parent company, Exelon, into a locally controlled, locally owned public power utility that mirrors others across the nation. We see those in places like Austin, in Los Angeles, in Omaha, and Seattle. Right now, our demands are quite simple, and there are small ways we can get there, but it can be achieved easily through a public power campaign. And those are lower and more affordable utility bills, investments in clean energy, increased community control and transparency, and then, of course, good union jobs.
Right on. And there's one other there's a lot more, but there's one in Maryland too. Easton, right, is a public utility. So, we've got some pride as Marylanders in that.
So for Baltimore Public Power is very much very similar demands, very similar goals, just a newer campaign. We started in December, and we are a campaign to transition our local utilities away from being investor-owned like BGE is with Exelon. So we both have the same parent company that's screwing us over, to transition that from investor-owned to a publicly owned utility, to ensure that you have a lower light bill, we have cleaner energy in your homes, and we have more local control over our utilities, and hopefully also produce a lot of local jobs for people in our city.
Yeah, and so I think the next question for me is, how did you get involved in this work? Like, what brought you to doing this work? And again, we'll start with Harrison, and then we'll go to Maddie on this.
Yeah, so how I got involved with really advocating for public power is, unfortunately, I'm a bit of a Nepo baby when it comes to this. Both of my parents and both of my grandfathers worked for the public power utility back home where I grew up in California. I studied it partly in my political science courses. When I moved to DC for unrelated reasons, I found the We Power campaign through DSA, and it really resonates on a core belief that our essential city services should be owned by people and not be extracted for any sort of profit mechanisms. It really came to me personally, and I think this will resonate with a lot of people, in an era where we've just seen nonstop corporate control and regular households are squeezed every single day by nonstop greed-motivated profit, we should flick on our lights and know that we're not enriching a huge hedge fund. We should be able to pay our bill in a way that is affordable and sensible, and know that we're not getting essentially screwed over. But that's my story.
I'm a pissed off BGE customer, to be real with y'all. Like that is the essentially the main reason why I'm here, and that was it's very personal for me. It's very, very, very personal because I've opened up my light bill many a times and seen how expensive it is. I distinctly remember a time where I was able to pay the bill down and my bill was mad low, and then they just charged me like $400 on my bill, and they say we're doing this just because it's just an arbitrary charge we can give to you, just in case you get a low, you get behind your bill in the future. And I just remember talking to my mother like, there's no way that they can just do that. You know what I'm saying? And then I think the first thing as an organizer, the first thing you go to, the first thing your mind goes to is the fact that if they're doing this to me, they're doing this to everybody else. And so once that came to my mind, and then we were talking to some of our tenants that live in public housing, they also mentioned that they're going through a lot of the same issues with high utility bills, and their service is provided through like a third party, but it's still BG at the end of the day. And so you're looking at folks who are already struggling every day to make ends meet, and they're getting $300, $400, all the way up to several thousand dollars utility bills. And so you realize, okay, we have a whole bunch of folks that live in the public housing that are going through this, a whole bunch of folks that are in private housing going through this as well. And then there's just so many people within Baltimore who are just organizers. We're very much an organizer type of city. And so, you realize, okay, well, I know my organizer friends going through this, and then my organizer friends going through this. And so it then becomes a matter of, let's just all talk to each other. Let's all connect. Let's all get to know each other and see how we can apply our organizing skills to something that's affecting the entire city. And so that was basically just a whole bunch of conversations amongst friends at that point. And then, the months went by, and we all just kind of talked and see how we could actually formalize this thing. And so, at December that we launched at Baltimore as Baltimore Public Power, we have a nice little cool logo with a crab because it's Baltimore. We got to do that. And yeah, it was, it was really just a matter of, it just seeing the fact, just knowing that more people in the city are going through this, and and BGE creates more angry customers every day, so there's more people for our team.
Right. Yep. And I know you have a question in a second, but I want to add a piece in here, which is the fact that they're both owned by Exelon means that Exelon's lobbying budget in Annapolis is tremendous. And so on a lot of days when I'm down in Annapolis, we don't actually probably even see the Exelon lobbyists most of the time because they're probably operating in a background level that is not the same way exposed to the public, but their presence is constantly there. And everybody knows that they are one of the biggest political contributors and one of the biggest lobbying contributors. And it is because they don't want you all to succeed. They want to make sure that they can control that monopoly because they are making money at record rates. They are making money at record rates while we are paying at record rates, and I think it is worth naming the corporation who is responsible for this while we talk about the other questions. So I appreciate that from both of you, and I know you have the next question, but I appreciate that naming of it. And I think in the future, as we dig into this more, we should dig into the kind of money they're spending on lobbying and the politicians they're giving it to, because I think that will give us a pathway to understand a lot of what is happening here.
Andy, to give you a bit more context too, Exelon also owns utilities up and down the Eastern Seaboard, and they also own a lot of generating capacities. So whenever Exelon is telling you that, it's because data centers are going up, we're just passing along the cost, that's really not true because they're setting the costs.
Yep. And I mean, we've talked a lot about PJM and the regional grid here, and we've talked a lot about data centers. And I think I'll send it to you. I don't know if you heard this or not, but there's an excellent Exelon executive interview on the Conduit Street podcast, which is the Maryland County podcast, where they are explaining their vision of all of this stuff. And I think it's super useful for anybody who's working in this space to hear what they say they're doing right now, because what they say they're doing is not much different than what you say they're doing, right? They're like, well, we have to do this in order to return value to shareholders, right? And so it's fascinating the way that this stuff connects to all the other stuff we're talking about. So, and I'll kick it over to you.
Oh, it's pretty brazen. I'll just say that I love this conversation because I've lived in the DMV in College Park and in DC for a couple of years, and I've been in Baltimore for the past 12. So anytime that we can get Baltimore and DC and DMV organizers together, the stronger we'll be. So this is really great for me to listen to this conversation and to be a part of it. But what's the bigger picture here, and what's your vision for a world, what the world we deserve when it comes to power and democracy and who controls essential services and utilities in our lives? What's the big picture?
Yeah, I think the big picture here is to finally move away most of our essential services and things that touch our life away from corporate control. I should be able to flick on my lights and know that my city is not only supplying this service, but owns it outright, in the same way that when I walk to the local library or I send kids to the local school, that it's not owned by a hedge fund. So a lot of this does come down to taking out profit incentives, because when you take out a profit incentive, you're really focusing on a dignified life. I should be able to pay my bill. My neighbor should be able to pay their bill, or the senior down the street on a fixed income should be able to pay their bill and live in a way that is comfortable without needing to pinch their pennies for a service that is needed by literally everyone. Electricity, it stores our food. It gives us access to jobs and education. It keeps our medical supplies like cold and fresh. I know a lot of diabetics that rely on electricity, and so if there's a sudden shutoff and they don't know their neighbors, they're kind of SOL. So it's more of it's a philosophical sense in that we shouldn't be scammed at every sense in every turn in our lives, and it's also a dignified one. But I'll kick it over to Amadi.
Yeah, basically, we don't want you to be terrified to open up your light bill every day. I mean, when it comes in the mail, at this point, I know for anybody that's opened up the app to see the BGE bill, that's opening up, your envelope and seeing your bill, it's your hardest race. It's a terrifying moment because you're already stretched thin. We don't want a world where that happens. You know what I'm saying? We don't want a world where people are forced and seniors are forced to choose between paying their utility bill, paying their rent, and paying for food. You know what I'm saying? None of those decisions should be based off of utility bills. And so we're trying to build a world where we have, like I said, more local control over our utilities, and in a world that is free from corporate control, and in a world that you have more autonomy and more decision making as a citizen at the local level, as it pertains to how you get your utilities and how electricity comes into your home.
Yeah, I think that's really great to frame it that way. It's really quite simple. We're not asking for an entirely different world. We might be, but in this particular campaign, we're not asking for something outlandish. We're asking for something that long existed before it got deregulated out of existence. We're asking for something that is common sense and makes sense to most people, and probably makes sense to most legislators, even the ones who are taking the money. That's why they're taking the money, is in order to swallow that nasty medicine, right? But I think most people get that the bills are going up, the profits are going up, the corporation is able to afford ads during the Super Bowl, right? Like any corporation that is able to afford ads during the Super Bowl, is doing pretty well, while we're all struggling, afraid to open that light bill, and also afraid that there's going to be rolling blackouts because they've given all of our energy to the data centers and to the trillionaire corporations and their hedge funds. And so I think it's like people are squeezed between these two things, where they're pretty worried that the grid is not going to last. We started talking about infrastructure, and the demand that these data centers are putting on the grid is a real threat. And the inability to get renewables online quickly is a real threat. There's a lot of stuff going on here. But at the end of the day, it's about that. It's about, we want stable and reliable power that does not cost us more than our mortgage, right? More than our rent, that we can actually afford, and that we're not facing homelessness or debt or significant debt to this big corporation because we have our light bills, or because our light bill is so much. So I want to ask a real sort of what do we do? What is the work in the meantime, while we're trying to get to that world we deserve, what does that work in the meantime? What does the path forward look like for each of the campaigns right now? What are you working on in the short term and for the rest of the year?
I'll jump in again. So what's great about a public power campaign, and this is transmutable across the country, is we can walk and chew gum. So we can do the small bills while working towards the long goal, right? So in the pursuit of public power, we've been trying to introduce draft legislation to increase utility transparency and oversight with our utility regulators. And at the same time, we're introducing ratepayer protections, some of which Maryland just passed. And those are things like banning the use of ratepayer funds. Those are the funds that you and I pay into paying back lobbying expenses for Exelon and BGE and Pepco, that kind of stuff. So there are these common sense steps forward to getting us towards a utility regulatory sphere that is more protective of the actual consumer and more transparent overall. Specifically for We Power DC, we have two campaigns that we're pushing for right now. We have a public service commission. It's a 3-person board that regulates all private utilities here in the district. 2 of those commissioners are up for reappointment this April, and we're pushing our DC council to not reappoint them. They've given away nearly $400 million in excess utility spending for both gas and electric in under 5 years. So our slogan for that is we need new leaders for lower bills. After that are those smaller but impactful bills that increase transparency and protect ratepayers. So imagine if right now in the regulatory landscape, even if you have the best regulators out there, they're still fighting against these utilities with one hand tied behind their back. The utility transparency bills would free up those hands, and then the ratepayer protections would actually give them a toolbox to fight back and really serve the public. I know it took up a lot of air there, but Amadi, over to you.
Oh, it's all good, all good. For us, because we are a brand new campaign, one of the things we've been focusing on is listening sessions, and then just outreach and base building. You know, we're at the beginning of this, and we know it's going to be a long fight, and so we're prepping ourselves to build a solid foundation of folks to fight from. And so we're talking to folks all over the city, different communities, trying to just see, hey, we know some folks in there who may be going through this with the expensive utility bills. Here's a campaign that's going on. Would you guys like for us to come and just talk about it, give you more information? So we're really in the initial part of just building a base of people to fight from. We believe that with the way that people have been talking, we see the Reddit posts every day in the Baltimore subreddit. We see the complaints on TikTok and everything, and so we know that there's many people out there who are definitely would be excited to learn that there's a group out there that's trying to kick BG out and ensure that we can have more affordable utilities. So we're in the beginning stages of building the base of folks and just talking to folks, knocking on doors figuratively. We'll be doing more door knocking when the weather gets a little nice and everything. So we're just in the beginning phase of that. So we're just talking to folks.
Yeah, that's great. And I think it's important to understand the different types of the work. And I think what we are going to do is be an electoral campaign, a publicly financed electoral campaign that can raise this issue at every single possibility. And we are fighting right now in order to be on the debate stage next fall when Maryland Public Television hosts the debate. We've got a bill in the General Assembly that we're working on to try to make it so that all minor parties, everybody who's on the ballot, can be on the debate stage. And we want to be on the debate stage so that we can raise this issue, so that when Democrats and Republicans are arguing about who's going to take more money from Exelon and who's going to be better at, doing what the lobbyists want, we can say, no, we are standing up for the people and for the movements that are organizing to take power back, put it in the hands of the people, and put these corporations first under control and then out of business. I know we're not focusing on the out of business part here tonight, but I think we need to say the first goal is to lower the bills. The second goal is to get them under control. And the third goal is to put the power back in the hands of the people so that we are able to control our own utilities in a democratic way. And the accountability is to the people, not to the shareholders. And I think all of this stuff combines to talk about what a public power campaign looks like. It looks like the legislative targeting. It looks like the regulatory schemes. It looks like the grassroots organizing, and it looks like the electoral politics outside of the two-party system, using publicly financed campaigns in order to build a movement that says, no more, we're not doing this, return the power to the people. And so I'm excited to hear about all the different parts of it and the ways that we can keep this conversation going over time.
Yeah, I'm getting that same feeling I had, that burning in my belly when I was at the protest at City Hall with the Baltimore campaign. I'm getting that feeling again right now. I feel like this campaign, or these two campaigns, just have a lot of momentum. It's such an immediate and material campaign that every working class person can relate to. And every millionaire and billionaire, they don't even know what their utility bills are, or if they do, it's so inconsequential to them. So it's really,
I think it's so bad that the millionaires kind of know, right?
The millionaires are starting to pay attention.
The billionaires don't know, but the millionaires are like, man, this BG&E bill, right?
Yeah, it's getting pretty bad. So how can, one of the reasons why we're doing this podcast and inviting organizers on is to create a platform and boost up the work that y'all are doing. So how do people follow your work, and how do people who are watching, or listening, get involved with your campaigns in DC and Baltimore?
Yeah, in DC, you could find us across social media, Facebook, X, and TikTok. Everything at We Power DC, all one word, capitalization doesn't matter. You can find us on our website at wepowerdc.org. That's also where you can find our white paper that we published last year, which lays out the legal, financial, and political landscape on how we achieve public power in DC.
You can find us at Baltimore_public_power on both Instagram and TikTok. Website soon come. We're working on that as we speak. And you'll be able to find just some videos we put together and some clips from the teaching that we had at Red Emmys.
Excellent. We will get all of that stuff. Into the show notes and all of that type of thing, and we'll make sure that people have access to it. And I'm really excited about the work that you all are doing, and I'm really excited about the opportunity to bring that work forward as we combine outside of the system electoral politics with on the ground grassroots politics and focused legislative and regulatory and consumer work. That is what we do if we want to change the system. And I love the conversation that we're having here tonight about it. And I love the ways to think about how we can continue having these conversations going forward, and how this model of bringing people together from multiple cities who have shared struggles, shared corporate enemies, and focusing on what we can do to change and protect our communities in the short term, and then build the future we deserve in the long term, is the work. It is the work, and it is exciting to get to work on it with you all. And I'm just thrilled to be doing this at this point. We got a long time before the election. It doesn't end at the election. It goes on past that, but the election is a good chance for us to raise this issue and make sure people are aware of it. And I hope we get to come out to some of your events. I hope we get to come out and see, when you all win that regulatory fight there in DC. We'd love to be there with you to make it happen and to celebrate. Just send us an invite. And Amadi, we're going to get together here and figure out how we can do more work. And thank you all. I really appreciate you all coming on tonight. Anything you want to say before we go? And obviously we'll have you come back on sometime soon.
All power to the people.
You stole my line.
That is what it's about. All power to the people. Thank you all both for coming on tonight. We appreciate it greatly. We'll get that information in the show notes. You're all doing amazing work, and we look forward to sharing more of it in the future, and getting you back on here.
Peace, everybody.
All right.
Thanks
Thank
all.
you.